Across the NFL, which teams have the strongest position groups? What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch here, back with another NFL video. In this video, breaking down the top, the best, the strongest position groups in the NFL on the offensive side of the football. My determination for the strongest position groups in the league at quarterback through the offensive line, and this is dependent entirely on depth and talent. Depth and talent, a combination of both. This is especially an exercise for depth. Which teams have the strongest depth charts in the league at every position? Before I give you the strongest position groups, the best position groups, make sure that you do spike the like button and subscribe to the channel for more BLV just like this. Now, let's get to those position groups. Kicking off the strongest position groups in the NFL today is the quarterback position. And with the quarterback position, it is the position that is most dependent on your starter. How great is your starter? That's the beginning and end to success in the NFL. Backups are nice, but at the end of the day, at the quarterback position, you need one guy. If he stays healthy, he's never coming off the field. There's no two quarterback system in the game today. So a backup's nice, a third string, great. But really, we're looking at how great's the starter, then do you have a good quality backup who can fill in when he gets hurt, and a third string is just a cherry on top. So let's begin with the third best position group at quarterback, which to me is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have, of course, Tom Brady, who is still arguably the greatest quarterback in the NFL today. Again, should have won MVP last year. A lot of people are forgetting how awesome Tom Brady was last season. Ridiculously awesome. If you don't know, he led the NFL in touchdowns and yards at like 4,000 years old. Now, when it comes to the backup position, you have Blaine Gabbert, a guy that's played over, I believe, 50 games in the NFL as a starter. This guy has real experience in the NFL. I think he's learned throughout the years as a backup and has actually gotten better as a football player. He's been praised by Bruce Arians, Todd Bowles, and the Tampa coaching staff. He is pretty talented. He can move. He definitely has a solid arm. And I feel is actually kind of an underrated, decent backup in the game today. He just doesn't really see the field very often. And then their third string is a second-round pick in Kyle Trask from a season ago. So they have plenty of talent at quarterback. Even if Brady were to see some sort of injury, moving into the future, it might be a competition even to see if Gabbert or Trask can take this team post Brady. The number 2 quarterback position group is the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens have a stellar 1-2. I feel like Lamar Jackson is a superstar quarterback in the game, and he's somebody that's very hard to replicate. So what I love about what the Ravens have been able to achieve with their quarterback room since getting Lamar is finding backups who can help replicate Lamar Jackson's rushing ability, his dynamic scrambling ability. And Tyler Huntley is arguably the most talented backup in the NFL today, played very well last season. I feel like this guy could be a starter in the future. So that's not only a top 10 starter, but also a upper echelon backup who can win you games off the bench. And then even somebody like Huntley is not a bad third string, certainly has some talent, and again, fits the mold of being a backup for Lamar Jackson. But the number 1 quarterback position group has to be the Buffalo Bills. Not only do they have my number 1 quarterback, Josh Allen, but they also have Case Keenum, a proven veteran backup quarterback who, if Josh Allen were to ever get injured, Case Keenum can come in. He knows how to win games. He's definitely not afraid of making throws and making plays. He knows how to manage a good team, and he's been there. He's done that. He's even made the playoffs. So I believe that this is the perfect quarterback room. A superstar quarterback with a backup that can play a great backup role, not get in the face or the way of the starter, but help the starter and then be able to fill in for the starter if anything goes wrong. And then you also have Matt Barkley, who's also seen action every once in a while over the last couple of years and hasn't fared too poorly. So I believe that is the best quarterback room in the NFL right now. Moving to the running back position, the strongest running back rooms. When it comes to the running back position, I believe you need 3 running backs to truly have a special running back room. 3 or more is ideal in my opinion. As a Patriots fan, I typically always sway towards depth when it comes to the running back position, because I feel like running back is the position where you need depth. Like, guys get hurt, guys go down. So if you want to be a successful team, you need at least 2 guys, but 3 is ideal in my opinion, especially guys who can complement each other well and play different roles off of each other. There are a lot of teams with 2 really good running backs. There's a lot of teams with 1 amazing one okay one. But I'm really looking for the depth, as this exercise is based on depth. So let's begin with my number 3 group at running back, which is the Seattle Seahawks. I love the Seattle Seahawks running back room. You've got Kenneth Walker as a rookie. This guy is a special running back talent. Like, he was one of my favorite players coming out of the draft. I love this guy. I think he's going to become one of the best pure rushers in the NFL very soon. But you also have Rashad Penny, who led the NFL in yards per carry last year. And yes, he's had his injuries, but the guy is extremely talented. And what I love about this combination is they're both home run hitters. They're explosive. Now, Chris Carson is technically a part of this backfield, but I can't really count him due to his injuries. Travis Homer and DJ Dallas, though, I can count, and you guys know those names. They've played, they've had some success. DJ Dallas is a guy that has a little bit of receiving chops, and Travis Homer is a little bit of a well-rounded kind of spell back. I believe that the Seahawks have a very underrated, explosive backfield. The number 2 running back room in the NFL today. When it comes to running back depth, not many teams can top the Patriots. You have Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson, who both ranked as a top 10 PFF back last year. Both phenomenal seasons a year ago. Rookie season for Ramondre Stevenson, who's a big bowling ball with quick feet. Very rare combination. I think Stevenson could be an amazing running back in this league. Also has hands. I wouldn't be surprised if he took over a little bit of that James White role this season. Damian Harris is one of the most efficient, effective running backs that gets no love and no respect, but every season he's graded high. Every season he is effective. Every season he's efficient. He breaks tackles, a ton of them. He's got great vision. He's got very good feet. The only thing he lacks is explosive ability. He's a very good player. What I love about those two is that they both can be guys that can carry the load for an offense running the ball. They both can carry the ball 20 times in a game, but they don't have to because they're both on the same team. So I love that for them. They also have James White, who is still one of the best receiving running backs in the league when he's on the field. If he's injured, okay, you're looking at guys potentially like the rookie Pierre Strong, who is the fastest running back in the NFL draft this year, has home run capabilities, also a very nice skill set as a receiver. And then JJ Taylor is another little shifty Dion Lewis 2.0 type of guy. And they even drafted another Harris in this year's draft. So they go 4 or 5 deep at this position with the legitimate talents. I like the Patriots backfield a ton, and I wouldn't be surprised if Stevenson is the one to really break out this year. My number 1 backfield in the NFL in terms of depth and quality is the Cleveland Browns. The Browns possess both the depth and the quality that you love to see. Not only arguably the best combo with Chubb and Hunt, but also Dearness Johnson, who's a very nice number 3, who a lot of people are talking about they're going to trade him because he's that good and teams will be looking to add him. Denetric Felton as well is a little kind of trickster running back who you can use as a receiver, a running back, a slot player, like a lot of different things, a move player. Hunt's a great receiver. Hunt's a little bit more bowling ball-esque, break tackles. Chubb's more home run, very efficient on the ground, arguably the best pure runner in the game. And Johnson showcased that he can be a starter in this league last year. This is a complete running back room that goes 3 or 4 deep. Absolutely the best in football. At the wide receiver position, I'm looking for 4 receivers to be exact. Anything past 4 is just a cherry on top, but 4 receivers is ideal. The reason I say 4 is because 3 guys are typically starters in the modern NFL, with a lot of teams running 11 personnel, which means 3 receivers, 1 tight end, and 1 running back. But when one of those receivers goes down, who is replacing that receiver? So to me, 4 receivers is like the perfect depth chart, and then just adding depth on top of that is just something extra that you love to see. So at number 3, I have the Miami Dolphins. They have a very, very, very good number 1 and number 2. Arguably the best number 1, number 2 in the game, especially when it comes to explosive ability and speed. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are arguably the 2 fastest receivers in the NFL, and they're on the same team. That is just different. And how they may align them and utilize them in the screen game after the catch, deep down the field, is just going to be special. Can Tua get them the ball? I don't know, but that's going to be special. And then you look at Cedric Wilson, who was a upper echelon number 3 last year. Really, as the team's number 4, Michael Gallup goes down. He has to fill in for some injuries throughout the year, and he just provides a really nice complement for those players in Dallas. Now he moves to Miami, where I think he's still being underrated as a really nice number 3, and I think he could operate as a number 2 on a lot of teams in this league. Preston Williams has had success in this league as a number 3, number 4 type of guy. He's a nice possession receiver. They also brought in Sherfield from the 49ers, who was the Niners number 4 and likely will be the Dolphins number 4 or 5 in this depth chart in this room. He's another guy that's flashed a little bit, nothing special. And then you got Lynn Bowden as well, who is kind of that move player, trickster, kind of like Felton is for the Browns. He could also be utilized a little bit like a Deebo Samuel was in San Francisco. I could see them doing some things with him as well in that regard. So Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Cedric Wilson is your top 3, but you also have Sherfield and Williams, who are nice number 4s. And then Bowden, who kind of rounds out the room very well. So I really like that because you have that top 2 awesome duo, explosive, but you also have possession guys and just great depth. My number 2 position group for the wide receiver position, this might be shocking, is the Cincinnati Bengals. The reason the Bengals is only number 2, not number 1, is because it's all on the top 3, and they don't really have a ton of depth past the top 3. I believe they could bring somebody in, like a nice veteran to round out the room and provide a little bit of depth in case one of these 3 go down, because that's really where they're truly dynamic and special as a football team, is those 3 receivers who are all basically number 1s and could be number 1s are in the same room, on the same team, on the same depth chart, right? They're the best trio in the game. But I'm looking at 4 receivers. I'm looking at 5 receivers. And the Bengals, Trent Taylor, Mike Thomas, I'm just not sure. We haven't seen a lot of production from them lately. So that's where I'm slightly shy when it comes to the Bengals. But with the trio, it's incredible. It's also young. It's in their prime. It's spectacular. All of that is amazing. I just wish they would have a more quality number 4 for me to be able to put them at number 1. My number 1 wide receiver position group, assuming the health of Chris Godwin, is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because they have not only 4 receivers, but they have about 6 receivers who legitimately could play in the NFL on a team. They have Mike Evans, they have Chris Godwin, who are one of the best combos in the NFL, and they perfectly complement each other as a slot receiver and as a perimeter receiver. Russell Gage is a fantastic, underrated route runner. I think he's going to be a perfect addition to this receiving core and a great complement to Tom Brady because he operates in the spots where Tom Brady is most comfortable. Brashad Perryman is another guy who possesses great physical ability, size, speed, and can make downfield plays, can create yards after catch. He's a good, decent number 4. Cyril Grayson is another guy that really came on last year for them, who got hurt before the playoffs, who would have been huge for Tom Brady as a speed threat. This guy's a true burner, a real sprinter. On top of that, Scotty Miller is another burner, downfield threat. Jalen Darden is another player that they drafted in, I believe, the 4th round, who they like as a little shifty slot receiver. And Tyler Johnson is a nice possession slot receiver. So some of these guys are hit and miss. Some of them are inconsistent, but they all play a role, and they're all kind of proven as at least complementary receivers in this league. Maybe none of them are like true number 2, number 3 guys, but they're great number 4, number 5s. And as long as they're not asked to be number 3s or number 2s, they're really good for this offense. So that's why I think the BUCS receiving room is the best. They're the deepest, and they have the most options to choose from here. Moving to the tight end position, at tight end, I'm really looking for 2 good players, and anything past 2 is great. Like 3 tight ends would be absolutely ideal for a team that likes to run a lot of 2 tight end sets, but 2 is basically all you need. It's really difficult to find 2 to 3 good tight ends on one team because the tight end position is just very shallow in general, and it's very hard to be a good tight end. So let's begin at number 3 with the Atlanta Falcons. They have Kyle Pitts and they have Anthony Firkser, formerly the Tennessee Titan, who I think is a very underrated possession tight end who also worked under Arthur Smith in the past and was successful as their number 2 tight end to Jonnu Smith. And I think he'll be a really nice complement to Kyle Pitts because with Atlanta, Pitts is a different type of breed where he can move around. He can play on the perimeter. He can play in the slot. He can play in line. So Firkser can work off of that. A lot of times he's going to play in line or he's going to play in the slot when Pitts is potentially at one of those other positions. So a lot of the times I could see Atlanta having 2 tight ends on the field due to the versatility that Kyle Pitts actually offers. Kyle Pitts is arguably the most skilled and talented receiving tight end in the game as soon as this year. He really possesses that type of upside, but obviously he's not really a well-rounded blocker or anything like that. That's really the only thing that's missing here for Atlanta is like a really nice blocking tight end that they could add to this room. The number 2 tight end room in the NFL is the Las Vegas Raiders with Darren Waller, Foster Moreau, and Jacob Hollister. That is a 3 tight end set that I think could be potentially dynamic for the Raiders. Waller is an elite top 5 option in this league and one of the most dynamic receiving weapons in the game with his speed, with his size, with his overall athleticism. And then you've got Moreau, who I think is one of the most underrated second tight ends in the game. Good, solid blocker, nice complement, but is a very nice inline player. I could see Waller lining up a lot on the perimeter, lining up in the slot, and you could see Moreau play in line. You could see Moreau moved around as well. I feel like McDaniels is going to get a lot out of Moreau this year. I feel like they're going to use more 2 tight end sets with Adams and Renfrow on the perimeter. Maybe Renfrow, maybe a little bit more closer to the line of scrimmage off the line so that he creates more separation. But those 2 tight ends are going to be really key to what this offense offers and does, especially to help that offensive line in pass protection. And then you've got Jacob Hollister, who is kind of like that safety blanket for, I would say, Darren Waller, as a guy that can move around and is a solid complementary receiving option for this offense. Obviously, he's not nearly as dynamic. He's not as good as Darren Waller, no question. But he has a similar skill set in terms of he's a move tight end. He's a receiving option. He's got good hands. He's a smart route runner. He's a crafty guy. And he's proven himself in a couple of spots. So Jacob Hollister is a good 3rd tight end. And the number 1 tight end room in the NFL today is the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens room is loaded in 2022. Mark Andrews is arguably the best tight end in football right now. Nick Boyle is arguably the best blocking tight end in the game today. They drafted Isaiah Likely, who's a really, really good receiving tight end. He looks like a big receiver. He's a guy that can get vertical. He's a guy that can work the seam, make plays while the ball is in the air. He could be a red zone option. He's going to be very nice as that extra receiving option for Lamar Jackson. Oliver is a guy that they traded for from Jacksonville that they liked a season ago. He could also be a nice complementary depth option. It's really about the two top guys, right? Andrews and Boyle, and how they complement each other. But then you have Oliver, you have Likely, you have guys that are nice options as number 3, number 4, quality depth to your receiving room here at the tight end position. The Ravens are number 1. When it comes to the tackle position, what I'm looking for at tackle is 3 players. 3 players is what you're looking for at tackle, because you need 2 starters and 1 swing tackle. Typically, a team doesn't lose multiple tackles in a season. Usually just 1 is injured, 1 goes down, and you need that swing tackle who can play left or right successfully. That's what I'm looking for at tackle. Moving to the offensive line, at the tackle position, the number 3 tackle room in the NFL is Baltimore. Baltimore has Ronnie Stanley back from injury, who could be the best tackle in the game again. He's that talented. He's been it before. He can be it again. Now, he's had injuries, but now the Ravens have more depth behind him, which is nice. Not only did they bring in Morgan Moses at right tackle, who's a very quality right tackle, not elite, but not below average. He's pretty well a solid tackle year in and year out, around that top 15 for his position. And then you bring in Jawan James as well, who Jawan James is a very, very talented guy that has seen a lot of injuries over the last couple of years, hasn't been able to stay healthy. But now as a third tight end, like a swing tight end, a guy that fills in for somebody that goes down, he is ideal in that spot because he has upside as a true starter and even a good starter, but he can also not be relied upon to be that starter because he's dealt with the injuries. So I think that's a really nice room that's kind of underrated and overlooked. The number 2 tackle room in the NFL today is the Green Bay Packers, with David Bakhtiari as the left tackle coming back from injury, hopefully, right? There have been some bad news reports based on his recovery and how likely he'll be able to get back to himself, but I hope, assuming he will be able to, I think he's still one of the best left tackles and one of the best pass protectors in the game today. Elgton Jenkins is one of the best right tackles in the game, also has guard flexibility, very good and young player in his prime. And then you've got 2 other guys that a lot of people like. Josh Neiman, who played a lot last year for the Packers. I believe it's Neiman or Nyman, but I believe it's Neiman. So overall, a player that graded fairly well for the Packers. Another one of those guys that comes out of nowhere and just seems to fit the system and does it fairly well. So he's a nice third option at tackle. Zach Tom is a guy that they drafted who I also think has some upside to be a starter in this league as well. I think they have got 4 deep here with some nice youth, some proven veterans, and arguably the best duo when they're healthy. And the number 1 room in the NFL today is the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are stellar on the offensive line, and it begins with tackle. Jordan Mailata, whatever, Makuma Matata, that guy is an absolute beast. And then you've got Lane Johnson, that's an easier name to say, is still a beast, absolutely. Andre Dillard actually played darn well last year when called upon and ranked in the top 50 of tackles last season. Jack Driscoll is a guy that could play guard or tackle. He played guard last year and succeeded and could play tackle this year for them if needed. He's another great depth option. I mean, you've got 4 legitimate starting options at tackle, which is extremely rare here. At the guard position, I'm looking again for 3 players at this position, 3 quality starters, specifically a dominant duo that starts, and then 1 interior guy who could play left or right side of the offensive line and fill in successfully, maybe not to the same level, but pretty well. The 3rd best guard room in the NFL today is built off a dominant duo from Kansas City. It's Joe Thuney and Trey Smith. Smith kind of came out of nowhere last year as a rookie, late round pick. Joe Thuney has been around for a long time. First year in Kansas City was successful. They also have Allegretti, who played pretty well for them last year when called upon. Kansas City typically has great depth in the interior of their offensive line, and it's no question that they do once again this year with a dominant duo in front of them. The second best guard room in the NFL today, entering 2022, is the New York Jets. Yes, the New York Jets. I know that's probably surprising, but Elijah Vera Tucker, Laken Tomlinson, that's an incredible duo right there. And then you add in Herbig, who was pretty good last year and has been pretty good, I believe, the last couple of years when filling in as a starting capable player at guard. So you've got two really good players, like one young player that's ascending, getting better, going to be dominant. One player that's been very consistent and quality for a number of years for San Francisco, who's now going to a similar scheme in New York. That's a great duo. And then you've got a really upper echelon backup that you know can play either spot, that you know can provide quality depth, and you know can fill in and play well. So that's a really good room in my opinion. The number one guard room in the NFL today, in my opinion, has to be the Cleveland Browns. The Browns have a guard duo where Joel Bitonio was the number one guard in the NFL this year, and I believe that Wyatt Teller was the number one guard in the NFL last year, according to Pro Football Focus. So that's just how good those two guys can be. And then behind that, you have Dunn, who's also played well when he's been called upon, which hasn't been very often, but I trust the offensive line coach there, and I trust the depth and the roster creation with how well they've been able to just consistently get good play out of offensive linemen, even in depth spots. So I believe the Browns have the best room because they have an utterly dominant duo, and then they always find a way to have good depth there. The center position, I'm looking for really the starter and then a backup. I don't think you necessarily need to look for three centers, as it's probably unlikely that you need three players that can play center on your team. One guy starts, one guy's a backup if that guy goes down. Typically, you don't need three in a season. Usually teams have guards that shift to center and centers that can play guard. So there's a lot of versatility and flexibility here. But in terms of my number three, I've got the Kansas City Chiefs with Humphrey and Reeder, who I believe very good number one, a young stud who could be the best in the game right now. And then a backup who's had some time as a starter. He's been shaky at moments, but he's also been good at other moments. So not the greatest of backups in the world, but a very promising young starter for Kansas City, and a guy that I've at least known can play at a starting level. The number two center room in the NFL today is the Detroit Lions, with Frank Ragnow and Brown. Brown actually had to start for Ragnow after he got injured and played very well, actually graded as a top 20 center in the NFL, and the Lions were lucky that they could re-sign him. I thought he was going to go elsewhere, get more money, actually start on a team, but no, he's back as very good quality depth. You know that if Ragnow gets hurt, you've got a starting quality center right behind him, similar to Andrews and Karras a year ago. And Ragnow is an elite player when he plays. He's a top 5 center in the NFL, absolutely, maybe even top 3. So the Lions got it locked down in the middle. And then the number one center position in the NFL today, it's got to be Philadelphia. You've got Jason Kelce, who's still an elite center, maybe not the best anymore, but like right in that conversation. Jurgens, who was drafted very highly as a player that Kelce loved. He actually promoted. He was like in love with this guy, and he thinks he's going to be spectacular. So a second round pick, high priority pick to replace Kelce in the future. You know he can play already like day one. If another team picked him, he'd be starting on that team. And then Dickerson was also drafted, I believe, to be a center, but plays mostly guard for the Eagles. So he's also kind of a guy that can float to either position. So that's just insane depth, as you've spent high capital on this position in numerous seasons in a row. So I think this is the best room in the NFL. Those are the best position groups in the NFL on the offensive side of the football. Make sure you do check out the defense video, which will be coming soon. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, don't forget to Gronk spike the like button and subscribe for more. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.